I'm Alan Wardis, and you're listening to Think Radio.
So what if we changed that fundamental perception to saying, no matter what the external evidence, it's better than you could ever imagine?
That's Kirsten Liegmann, entrepreneur, sustainable management expert, and president of the Foundation for a New Humanity, an organization she co-founded with her husband, legendary 1960s activist Rennie Davis. Their message is simple but radical, that changing the world is about changing ourselves, specifically changing how we think. Stick around for another great conversation on this episode of Think Radio.
Think Radio is supported by the Gunnison Country Times, Gunnison's locally owned hometown newspaper, and by listeners like you. To find out how you can become a Think Radio supporter, visit kbut.org.
Kirsten, thanks for coming by.
Well, thank you, Alan.
You are the president of something called the Foundation for a New Humanity. I want to get right to it. What's wrong with the old humanity?
There's nothing wrong with the old humanity.
Why do we need a new one?
Well, humanity has been on a journey to evolve from its inception, which let's call it chromosome 23, right? That's when humanity showed up. And we've been on a journey to evolve since. So this is not about old, wrong, new, better. It's not about that. This is about making evolutionary steps to increase our awareness and broaden our perception, broaden our perspective. So we're just reaching consciously now for that next leap. All of us have been, I'll adjust that a little bit. Many of us have been on a spiritual journey for quite a while. We've gone through different traditions and spirituality. We were just at an event, and one gal said, I'm really good right now, but I know there's something more. I know there's something, and what I love, I call it beckoning.
Yeah, that describes the feeling that a lot of people walk around with every day. There's something else out there. Mm-hmm. But you've used some interesting words already that I really want to dive into. Awareness, perception, perspective. And you've linked those words with the idea of evolution. And in a materialistic world, a lot of people would think of evolution as DNA. It's, sort of a materialistic Darwinist word in modern usage. You're using it differently. Explain that.
Yeah. And a lot of people think of evolution on the technological side, too. So That's another whole category of evolution. It's like we're improving our technology, therefore we're evolving. In our work, evolution is about what we're calling the stage of awareness. How aware are we of ourselves, of our thoughts, of our perceptions? So this really goes back to what's happening at the particle collider in Switzerland and what they're finding in physics.
Wow, that was a leap I did not see coming. But let's go there. That sounds fun.
Well, because, if I just come in from let's call it the spiritual conversation, people go, no, that's just new age wah-wah. But really, our science, quantum physics, they're dancing all around. It's a convergence of spirituality and science that is happening right now. In that science, quantum physics is seeing that all of their experiments and all of what they're looking at is influenced by their thoughts and their perceptions. The experiments change when they're in the room or when they're not in the room.
Depending on how they set it up, depending on what they expect to find, that's
exactly
what they find.
Exactly. Their expectation, which then forms their thoughts, causes the experiment to change.
So we're way beyond philosophy here. This is something else. This is a new edge to this journey of discovery. But I want to back up and make sure I understand what you're saying. Is that physical reality is altered or manipulated in some way based on a human being's thoughts? Is that what you're saying?
That is exactly what I'm saying.
Okay, well, keep going down that rabbit hole for a second and tell us why you can be so confident of something like that. Because you're right. In a lot of people's mind, that is sort of a fringe idea, something that doesn't really belong in the same sentence with the word science. Why are you convinced otherwise?
Well, in the work that we do, we always say get your own evidence. That's number one. So we never say, take this at face value. Actually, to see what happens if you change your perception. Does your reality change? So my confidence in that comes from me actually applying the concepts and practicing changing my perception. So let me give you one little example.
Oh, I would love to have a big example for that matter.
Well, think about what is a standard perception that our society as a whole is holding right now. We've given it a name, and it's called Murphy's Law. What's Murphy's Law? If one thing doesn't get you, something else will.
The other can go wrong.
It will go wrong. We've given it a law, so there's a collective perception that something will go wrong. Well, guess what? Something will go wrong if you say something will go wrong. So what if we changed that fundamental perception to saying, no matter what the external evidence, it's better than you could ever imagine. And
so even if it appears to be going wrong.
Yes, because how often do you come to a moment in the future and you go, oh, that's why that happened. Of course, now it makes sense. I learned X, Y, Z, or it took me in this path where I otherwise wouldn't have gone. So
the answer to that, it happens all the time. If you're paying attention and you're honest with yourself, you can almost always find that kind of conclusion to something that you initially thought was a bad event.
And so now we're bringing it back to where you started with is, what is evolution? And why is awareness an evolutionary journey? It's becoming aware and conscious of what thoughts and perceptions we're holding, and not just doing hindsight assessment of something, but rather going, okay, I am going to take charge of what is going to unfold by changing my own perception and holding that I don't know why this is happening right now, but I know this is better than you could ever imagine, and therefore unfolding your pathway in a way that is magical, it's delightful, and you go into a state of being of curiosity and innocence rather than being worried and stressful about what's happening. The only knowledge you have, the only knowingness, it's going to be better than you could ever imagine. You break your leg. Why did that happen? Generally, we take it down the road of that was a bad thing. But what if that kept you from having a larger accident, or it stopped you and you had to go to the hospital and the nurse is the love of your life? You don't know why things happen. We are so much more powerful as creators than we have any knowledge of. And so the path of evolution is us becoming aware of that power that we have and taking conscious charge of that.
Well, and there's a word that describes a lot of what you're talking about. You've said we have this power. But the word that comes to my mind that goes along with that is responsibility.
Absolutely.
Because most people think, it's actually comforting in some ways to think, things can go wrong, because that means it's happening to me, and I can excuse it then, or I can make excuses for those things. I don't have to say, whoa, wait a minute, did I play a role in that? So tell me about how that word, responsibility, plays into what it is that you teach.
Well, I throw in a few more words into that whole mix. Guilt, fault comes into that. And
wait, you're not going to take my guilt away from me, are you?
I'm going to try. I'm going to invite you to consider setting that aside.
We've been such good friends for so long.
Sorry, Alan.
Okay, so continue. Yeah. What are these words?
Right. So if you take what I just said to the fullest extent possible, where you say every nanosecond of your life is your creation and a mirror reflection of your thoughts and experiences. Yes, all of a sudden, you're 100% responsible for your experiences. A lot of people go gulp or no way. They reject it outright because we are either really addicted to being in victim. Somebody has got to be doing something to me. We don't want to step into taking responsibility. I don't know if you're familiar with the movie The Secret that came out.
Yeah, I've seen it.
And people really were like, oh, that can't be, because they took it into a very shallow way of thinking about it. You create your own reality, so change your thoughts and you'll get rich, and so people rejected it. The complexity is really beyond this conversation right now.
Well, it was about gratification, not about evolution.
Right, and there's other things going on too, like, we are connected as a species. We are a hive species, and so there's other things that come into that. But your reality, you are 100% responsible for it. A lot of people took that then, bad things happening to me is my fault. And so therefore I'm guilty and I feel shame and all of that. And therefore they wanted to reject it as well. But what if rather than going down that road, we can all of a sudden say, it's 100% empowerment. If I can start waking up more and being aware and conscious of my thoughts and perceptions and what is going on internally, where I change my body chemistry towards a positive body chemistry rather than stress and adrenaline and all the things that go along with, those emotional states of
Which
being,
is another thing.
100% empowerment.
That's another thing that science has confirmed, is that, in fact, our bodies are neurochemical highways of emotion, and that we create those things with our thoughts. But the empowerment, why does that matter? That's such an overused word.
Mm-hmm.
Every new philosophy, every new thing that comes down the road talks about empowerment. That's how it's sold. What makes this different? Well, from The Secret. Empowerment to what? To do what? To be what?
To be the creator of your own life in a way that is more conscious, more aware. This is one of the challenges of this work, is there's echoes of what we talk about in previous traditions and the spirituality. And so some of those words, become quote unquote overused. Mm-hmm. So really the work is to find the essence of what am I really saying, rather than saying, well, it's been used now for the last 10 years, so it's stale. How about finding the energy behind it again and saying, okay, what does 100% empowerment mean? It means you're not running around blaming your spouse, your parents, the government, everything around you for your life and what you're experiencing. It's saying, okay, I'm going to take responsibility for my experiences, and I am going to choose the journey to evolve to actually now shapeshift my reality in a way that assists my waking up, making a leap of life, making a stage of awareness leap.
So give me an example from your personal life where you saw this happen. You actually saw it.
So one of the things is I call myself a recovering German. I was born and raised in Germany. And for those of you who are German, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Congratulations is all I can say. Now, I know a lot of really fine Germans, so let's be clear here.
I love Germans.
What we're talking about is a mindset.
Yes, it is a cultural framework upon which we are raised, which is be very directed. There is, at least when I was still in school, quite an authoritarian structure to it, I mean, the teacher was at the side of God, and there is a strength that can be a little harsh. So I come into the work world with that sort of bullish, like, I am going to make things happen. And so what that did is it caused a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry, and it would sit in my solar plexus. And, it ended up being a migraine. And it was because I was not aware and didn't know how to deal with this stress complex. So with the work that we've been doing, I have identified exactly what is pulling my strings on that. It's not who I am. Stress is not who I am. And so step by step, becoming more and more aware of it, and then knowing that because it's not who I am, dealing with it, all of a sudden it's amazing. I mean, we're about to go into a 2-day event next week where there's about 100 people showing up, followed by our wedding. And I am flowing. I'm in flow with this in a way that I've never experienced in my life. Now that I call liberation. And for people who've done this work and they've gotten rid of fear, they've gotten rid of stress, they've gotten rid of irritation, judgment, it's liberation. It's like something disappears and all of a sudden you have more of yourself.
So we've been throwing out a lot of words. Where does the word choice play a role in how you go from being ruled by your stress or fear or guilt or anger to being in the kind of flow that you're describing?
It's a big one. Obviously, it's the key one. And
This
I
word
would
choice.
Yeah, it has to be a choice. And the other word that I would put right next to it is will. Not willpower. The will to say, I am going to learn the steps to step out of the addiction to the emotions and step into a new way of being. My partner, Rennie, and I, we teach these classes. They're called Life Principle Training, and those are the framework for this new humanity. And what we're seeing is really fascinating in that each consecutive group seems to be getting it faster. They seem to be moving at a faster pace. You know, we were shocked with this current group that started in February. They are already at a place that the previous group was in half the time. So there seems to be a paving of the way that opens it up to the next wave to really get it faster. So it's really amazing to watch.
Well, so that is an excellent segue, I think, into the next question, which is, this is called the Foundation for a New Humanity, not the Foundation for a New Human. You've got a collective mission in mind. What's at stake? I know in my own life what's at stake is my health, my mental well-being. If I can deal with stress, I'm a happier person. The people around me are happier, better off. What about collectively? What's at stake for humanity that makes you feel that this is important work on that level?
Yeah. Humanity is at a choice point right now. And there are millions of us that are looking around the world and saying the way humanity is living on Earth is completely and utterly unsustainable. And the way we are living with each other is also unsustainable. We're going down a road of anti-life. The largest extinction in the history of the world is happening right now. Oceans are dying. Coral reefs there's less than 40% left of those. Plastic pollution is in the oceans and we don't know how to deal with it. I mean, you name it, you keep going and going, and now we're sort of almost making jokes about, pick your natural disaster, where do you move to? So,
and this really is a conversation that you can hear happening all over the place. You go to a coffee shop, you go to the bar, you go to the restaurant, in churches, around
I was in
kitchen
Germany.
tables.
Everybody was talking about it. People are becoming aware of it, and we are literally at a choice point right now. Do we choose to keep going down this road of, let's just call it anti-life, or do we choose to make this evolutionary leap? I recently saw again Einstein's quote, we can't solve our problems with the same level of thinking that we had when we created them. That phrase needs to be changed to we cannot solve our problems with the same stage of awareness that we were in when we created them. We need a new perception, a new way of thinking about things, seeing things through a different lens. Let's take respect as one of the core principles. How would the world look if we designed every piece of infrastructure, every governance structure, every educational system, our penal system, with a fundamental principle of respect?
Respect for other people.
Respect for other people, respect for the earth.
For the planet, for other creatures.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The skeptic out there is going to say, yeah, I get it. I read the news. I know what a mess we've made. But are you honestly trying to tell me that how I think is going to make any difference at all? How do you answer a question like that? Because it's valid. I mean, we're so used to a roll up your sleeves and, you got to knock something down or build something up. What does awareness bring to the table that hasn't been tried before?
We're not saying don't do action. Okay, I want to be very, very clear on this. Mm-hmm. And so we have a distinction. There's two groups that we're looking at that we see are the hope for humanity. One is the stand up for humanity. And those are the ones that are going to go out there. They're going to show up in the millions like they did in the 60s. We're here on a campus of environment and sustainability. I have an MBA in sustainable management. That is my lineage of, how do we change from inside the structures and do that? But equally important is this other segment of the new humanity that has got to understand that we need to make this evolutionary leap. And so let me ask you the question back. Mm-hmm. When everybody on Earth believed that the Earth was the center of the universe and the sun circled around the Earth, you could have asked the same question when Copernicus came around and said, excuse me, everybody, but you might want to consider this. And how long did it take for that to enter the underlying consciousness of every human being that, oops, we are actually not the center of the universe? We are facing as dramatic or possibly a more dramatic shift in our understanding of how this world works right now. So let me address the idea of a skeptic, first of all. To me, skepticism is a closed state of being. It's a closed energy that says, prove it to me. It's not a person that is easy to engage with. Uh-huh. So what we invite people to take a stance is open curiosity. Uh-huh. What if I'm right? What if quantum physics is right? Uh-huh. That actually our thoughts are the source of all your experiences. Try it out for yourself.
And honestly, at this point, what have we got to lose?
What have we got to lose? Exactly.
The trajectory we're on is not looking so good.
Exactly.
So give it a try.
Give it a try.
As you look back on your own life, tell me that moment or series of moments where you went from being an entrepreneur, leading a manufacturing company. When did you say to yourself, oh man, there is something else, and I have to go find out what it is?
There's one specific moment that I would say was the ignition moment for me onto the spiritual path. And what's so fascinating is I come from a household where I have, on the one side, a very religious parent and a very atheist parent. Very in their belief systems. And so really that opened up my door to say, okay, these feel closed. These don't feel what feels right for me. And I remember I had just come from Germany. I was at West Valley College in California, and I was in a psychology class. And they had an evening event where Bill Moyers interviewed Joseph Campbell. And I remember sitting in this little theater way up in the back, and I was listening to Joseph Campbell talk about the hero's journey, the hero going out, and I'm getting goosebumps telling you this story, and going to slay the dragon. And I tell you, Alan, that was my wake-up moment. I knew what he was talking about with the dragons, the inner dragons, that we had to go out and find those dragons, slay them to come back home. And I've been on that journey ever since.
As you look forward, what does a new humanity look like on Earth? What's hanging out there in your mind that's worth working so hard to achieve?
Wow, that is such a big question. So the first thing I want to say is there's no end point. The journey will continue into eternity for us. In a lot of the spiritual traditions, there's this moment of enlightenment. I have ascended now, and I have reached the pinnacle, and
There's always room to grow.
We are on a journey to evolve. When you look at the stages of evolution, we're just waking up. We get to go to awareness, then consciousness, then intelligence. The joys in the journey. We keep hearing that. So let's have that as our underpinning. The journey gets to be continued for a long, 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 long time.
And yet, life can be better.
Absolutely. How do we make life better? So, we talked a lot about really working on our perception. So there's a whole framework that we've developed that will give us that jumping off point to the next stage. It's a simple process by saying, okay, do you understand what respect does? Do you understand how when you are in appreciation and gratitude, it changes your body chemistry? When you are in open, curious innocence is the most powerful state in the universe you can be in. Swallow that one.
And if you don't believe that on its face, give it a try.
Exactly.
Just give it a try.
This is not about becoming groupthink at all. We're on a path of individuation, and then from that place, we can come together. And so how do I envision the new humanity? In a collaboration to look at how do we design? We have this meme that we're bringing in, let's create a new nation on Earth that is designed by the new humanity. What would that look like? What does governance look like from that place? But we don't go into drama on trauma all the time. I mean, most collaborations, many of them deteriorate very quickly into drama and trauma. So how do we deal with not going there?
Well, we're kind of addicted to that stuff.
But we're addicted because of the chemistry that these emotions create. And we make a distinction between feelings and emotions. I want to be really clear on that. Emotions are chemical, and we are addicted to it. How righteous do we get about being angry? How righteous do we get about being judging? But feelings register in our nervous system. It's an electrical experience versus the chemistry of emotions. And so
we've got a lot to learn. And you keep saying the word we. Who's we? Who's your partner?
My partner is Rennie Davis. He was one of the Chicago 7 in the 1960s. And, he knew at the time that there were millions that were ready to step out and change the social structures then.
And he helped make that happen. And I set you up because I had Rennie on the show just a couple of weeks ago. and I encourage everyone to go listen to that episode because Rennie's an amazing thinker.
Yes.
Where can people go to find out more?
Our website is FFH, so that's like foundationforhumanity.org.
Okay.
And then if you scroll down on the first page, you'll see the event that's coming up next week. We're gathering the pioneers of the new humanity next week, Friday, Saturday, for a 2-day event that is going to knock your socks off. And it's really about how do you find this liberation that we're talking about? How do we come together to create this new way of living, and let's open this field of possibilities and see what could we create. So do join us. It's going to be amazing.
All right. Kirsten, nice work. And thanks for stopping by.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much, Alan, for having me.
Think Radio is a production of Alan Wardis Media. To contact Alan, visit alanwardismedia.com.
The show's producer is Issa Forrest. Original music by Issa Forrest. Thanks for listening. Join us next week for another great conversation on Think Radio.